G'day. Thanks for coming, everyone. I've got three matters to touch on today. Firstly, and primarily, of course, Australians during the day will have been very concerned, understandably and rightly, to see the footage from Geelong. This fire started at around 11 p.m. last night and was extinguished around lunchtime today. Good news that no worker has been injured. Everyone's safe and accounted for. Obviously, I've been talking through the night and during the day with the Chief Executive of Viva, assessing the impact of this fire. This is not a positive development. This is not good timing, and this is a setback. But I can assure Australians the government and industry are working very closely together to manage the impacts of this fire and to ensure ongoing fuel security for Australians. I can say that Viva has advised me the likely impact is primarily on gasoline and aviation gasoline. Gasoline is what we would mainly call petrol. And aviation gasoline, it's important to note, is not jet fuel. They are separate and different things. Aviation gasoline is usually used primarily for small planes. We use about 6 million litres a month of aviation gasoline, and we have 23 million litres in stockpile, around 116 days in reserve. So I think that is something which we will be able to manage quite successfully. I am pleased to say that diesel and jet fuel production in Geelong remains underway at reduced levels for a period of time as a safety precaution, but we're confident that will return to strong levels quickly. Viva, once the safe orders have been given that it's safe to investigate and to enter all the relevant sites, will make further assessments of just about what the impact on petrol production will be. There will be some, but it won't come to an end in Geelong, and Viva is confident that they will be able to replace the impacted petrol production with imports. Obviously there's work to do over coming days, more damage to assess and measures to put in place, but they're confident at this point that any petrol or that the petrol production that has been impacted and will be impacted can be replaced by imports of petrol and extra cargoes that they intend to order. Obviously, we'll continue to work over the weekend with Viva, and I will provide, as Viva will, full updates to the Australian people as soon as more information and clarity comes to hand. I think Australians would understand this is a fast-moving situation. The site is still being secured and making sure it's safe for everyone to get in and assess the damage, and that work will continue over the next couple of days. Second matter I wanted to update you on is, of course, as the Prime Minister's just announced from Malaysia, we have successfully secured the first cargoes under the Export Finance Australia arrangements from Brunei, where the Prime Minister was yesterday, and also from Korea. 2 ships, 50 million litres of diesel on each ship, 100 million litres of diesel extra secured for Australia and for Australians. The government and Viva working together to get those ships locked in, ordered. They will arrive in Australia during May. This is a good development and the first of many, I expect. The EFA being able to work with companies. Yesterday I announced IOR and Park have been added to Ampol and Viva as companies who are participating in the EFA arrangements, and I expect to be able to make further announcements in coming days about further progress when it comes to EFA. This is a good thing. This is exactly what the situation was designed for, to get extra cargoes into Australia, and of course diesel is where the pressure primarily has been in relation to regional Australia. I will also be convening the Energy Ministers meeting next week, the Energy and Climate Ministerial Council, State and Territory Ministers, together with New Zealand, to assess the latest updates since we last met. This is not in response to the fire. It was something we planned to do, but it is a timely meeting of the Energy Ministers next week. I also, as I do usually daily, just wanted to give you the latest update on service station outages. Again, as I have many times, thank everyone who's worked so hard to ensure service stations are fully stocked. In New South Wales today we have 56 service stations without diesel. That's down 28 on yesterday's report and down 56 on a week ago, so that's a halving in a week, and represents 2.3% of service stations in New South Wales. 13 with no fuel in New South Wales. Victoria, 18 with no diesel. That's 1.1% of service stations in Victoria. 10 with no unleaded. That's 0.6%. Queensland, 35 with no diesel, 17 with no regular unleaded. South Australia, 4 with no diesel and 14 with no unleaded. Western Australia, 10 with no diesel and 26 with no unleaded. Tasmania 11 with no diesel, 22 with no unleaded, Northern Territory 3 with no diesel, 1 with no unleaded, ACT 0 with no diesel, 1 with no unleaded. That's a total of 136 service stations across Australia without diesel. That is 1.7% of Australian service stations, so roughly 98% do have diesel. So thank you for coming in later than normal press conference. As I'm sure you'd understand, there's been a lot of activity today. Happy to take your questions.
Minister, is there a growing likelihood the government will need to move to stage 3 or stage 4 of the emergency fuel plant due to this fire?
Not directly as a result of this fire. We'll continue to monitor the situation. This is a negative development, as I've said. This is not a good development when it comes to what we're managing, but we're managing it. This in and of itself, because Viva have told us that they're very confident they can replace the petrol with imports, this in and of itself won't lead to a change in the status of the 4-point fuel plant.
Can you rule out us move to stage 3 this month as a result of these outages?
Well, I think I just answered that.
I mean, so Viva's obviously said, given guarantees that they'll be able to import that petrol that they've lost. And how much petrol is that? And obviously the market's getting more competitive. So should they not be able to do that, what then will be the impact?
Well, we don't know exactly what the impact on petrol production will be. There'll still be some. We don't quite know just how much will be impacted, to be fair to everyone. We're still assessing the damage. Geelong Viva refinery makes 7 million litres of petrol a day, which is a substantial amount, but some will continue to be produced. And as I said, compare that, I think, by way of comparison, it's not apples and oranges, but just by way for the purpose of the conversation, we just secured 100 million litres of diesel, for example, separate to petrol, but that gives you an idea of how much is on a cargo tanker coming in. Cargoes are available, they are expensive, but that's why EFA is providing the assistance, why the Albanese government through the EFA is providing assistance. We are.
I'm following that. The other thing is obviously importing it. Is that going to increase the cost of it as well?
Well, petrol is similar cost regardless of where it's produced.
And do we have any clarity on the health and environmental impacts of the fire on the surrounding population?
Well, as you know, the Victorian Fire Rescue Victoria issued a stay indoors alert last night in the early hours of the morning. They then changed that to an advice notice today. Obviously, again, there'll be a lot of smoke in the vicinity, but as I understand it, they have lifted the stay inside notice and said just simply it's an advice notice. So obviously, again, it's not good for the atmosphere and the environment, but they haven't expressed any particular health and safety concerns.
Does this fire make you reconsider if we should release more fuel from the strategic reserve?
Not in and of itself, no.
Minister, Jacinta Allen said this fire would need to be assessed against the national plan, the impacts of this fire. Does that not logically mean that National Cabinet will have to meet and discuss about potentially going?
Well, as I said, I talked to my energy minister's colleagues. We're having a meeting early next week. National Cabinet will convene if and when needed. The Prime Minister is in regular contact with his Premier counterparts. Of course, this is one of the many things we'll consider. We consider the international supply chain environment, we consider the situation in Straits of Hormuz, we'll consider this, but this in and of itself doesn't lead to a decision to change levels.
Have there been any discussions today about the potential need to go to a higher stage?
Not that I've been involved in, no.
Just on that 100 million litres of diesel, I mean, do we know how much extra that will be for our own diesel reserves?
Well, it's extra supply to Australia, so it all gets added to our reserves, and then if you like, replaces fuel that's being kept in reserve, and then gets distributed to regional Australia is the idea, and that will happen, and it will arrive during May.
Are you looking to restore the capacity of any of the mothballed New South Wales refineries as a consequence of this?
We've received various suggestions and ideas, but there's none in terms of the big refineries, Kurnell, etc. No. These are refineries that were dismantled some time ago and very substantially.
Santos Chief Executive Kevin Gallagher today said drilling oil out of Western Australia's Bedau Basin.
Is what, sorry?
The drilling oil out of Western Australia's Bedau.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
New South Wales has come very much to the top of our thinking, given the supply crunch from the war. Would the government support Santos drilling for oil in that basin?
Well, we'd support it if it stacks up environmentally, economically, and in engineering fashion. These are not matters of a culture war, as far as I'm concerned. Some people try and drag this to a culture war, you're pro or against drilling. Obviously, if there's sensible proposals to drill in Australia, which will replace imports, great. it's not the answer to all our problems. I mean, a lot of our oil has been depleted. We've used it, and a lot of oil in Australia is not suitable for our refineries. Nevertheless, we'll work constructively with proposals, like we will with Queensland when that proposal is received by us. We use about 150 million litres a day, so the Australian production isn't going to match that, but anything sensible which helps fill the gap, sure. But again, I mean, these are not proposals which will help us next week, next month, and often not next year. The 2030s is when a lot of this stuff would come on if it goes well.
On that, do we still have supply into June, or is it the first few weeks of May at the moment?
No, May is now covered. So, we have contracts through May. I'll provide a further update on Saturdays when I provide the weekly update, as you know, on ships on the way to Australia. I provide each week, every Saturday, I hold a press conference. I run through what the stock holdings are, what ships are on the number of ships are on their way to Australia, what contracts are locked in for the next 4 weeks. I do that every week. I'll do that again this Saturday, as I do, regularly. But I can say that we are now covered for contractual arrangements through May.
With jet fuel output at reduced levels at the Geelong refinery, what will be the impact to the nation's supply?
As I said, there's impacts on jet fuel, but I expect those to be quite temporary. They just reduced the jet fuel and diesel production today, just as they're dealing with. Not expecting that to be a permanent thing, no.
Is it a coincidence that one of our two oil refineries has had a catastrophic fire during a national fuel crisis?
What's the alternative to it being a coincidence?
Well, in a sense...
A conspiracy? No.
Not quite, but more like, in a sense, like, do we know more as to why the fire occurred?
Yeah.
Was it under increased pressure?
No, look, I do... the preliminary conclusion of the fire authorities was it an equipment failure. I was asked this morning, was it sabotage? There's no evidence of that. It appears to have been very accidental and equipment failure. There'll be further investigations. This is highly, making petrol is a highly dangerous and flammable exercise. I think that's pretty self-evident. It works safely 99.99% of the time on this occasion. It's bad timing, but it didn't work safely on this occasion.
If there's been maintenance that's been delayed, put off, foregone because of the need to increase refineries' output, is that maintenance now going to go ahead at Geelong and at the other
I don't accept the premise of the question that there's been delays in maintenance in Geelong, because that is not something that I would accept. There's been a decision in Lytton to delay a long-planned big maintenance, which wasn't meant to have occurred just yet anyway. It was meant to occur in July. It's been delayed for a few months. Quite separate to this. So if there's a suggestion that somehow, there's been corners cut, that's just not right.
Are there going to be additional safety measures or maintenance provisions?
Well, I mean, obviously Viva will examine what's gone wrong here, but they do have a very good safety track record. There's been a terrible incident last night, but let's let the inquiry and reviews and fire safety investigations take their course.
Is there a contradiction here, Minister, that you're saying now that if new oil drilling projects stack up, we should go ahead with them, whereas earlier this week you said you didn't think expanding fossil fuels production was a lesson from the crisis?
Well, no, because what I'm talking about there is there's the immediate challenge, and then there's some who say the answer to this is to somehow become more reliant on fossil fuels. That's not a view I share. It's not a view that any ministerial counterpart around the world I've spoken to shares. We are dealing with a short-term issue, yes, of supply. There's been a fossil fuel supply check. This is a fossil fuel supply crisis internationally. The answer to that is sensible measures like the ones that we're undertaking, the Prime Minister's undertaking. In the longer term, if it can reduce to some degree or a greater degree our dependence on those fossil fuels, that's a good thing. So, for example, our EV take-up in Australia, our number of EVs in the fleet is relatively low at the moment. High in sales terms, but low as a percentage of the fleet, because it takes a long time. Even with the low, relatively fossil fuel EV take-up we have, that's avoiding the use of 15 million litres a week of fuel. That's a good thing, because that's 15 million litres we have available for others. That's part of it. Now, if we have higher EV sales and higher EV penetration and higher EV percentages across the entire fleet, that figure will come down even more and provide more fuel options for those who, an EV is not a viable option just right now. So And again, I participated yesterday in a conversation on the Prime Minister's behalf with the Prime Minister of Japan, Singapore, East Timor, Bangladesh, India, a whole bunch of Asian and Asian adjacent countries yesterday. It was a very common theme from the interventions by the Prime Ministers and Presidents. One, we have to work together in the short term. That was the first theme. Two, this underlines and underpins why we're undergoing, one of the reasons why we're electrifying and trying to get more sovereign sources of renewable energy so we are less reliant on these fragile fossil fuel supply chains.
So you might have touched on this before, but just to be clear, is there going to be any impact of this fire at the refinery on prices at the Bowser?
I don't envisage so, because this is a supply issue and Viva is anticipating being able to replace the supply by imports.
Minister, can we just tease out a little bit more of stage 3? What does that look like? Does that include the points from the IEA's, I think it was a 10
I mean, it's the 3-stage, the 4-stage plan is out there for all to see. I accept its principle base, but really stage 3 is after an impact on supply in Australia, which we've not yet experienced. You know, every boat that we've expected to arrive has arrived, so we haven't experienced any impacts on supply to Australia. And really it then moves to sort of more active voluntary measures. We have an advertising campaign letting people know what they can do now, for example, but more active voluntary measures to encourage fuel efficiency. That's really what stage 3 is about.
Is that sort of calling on people is that when it's the government will say to people you should get public transport to work or you should carpool?
Well, where we provide sort of more active encouragement to do those sorts of things.
Active encouragement, kind of not mandates.
No, that's not contemplated in stage 3, no. Okay, good. Thanks for coming. See you tomorrow.